We now start the conference with the first panel, that is Hindu Women's Network. And I will be giving brief introduction to Dr. Neelam Jaiswal and Mrs. Manju Tiwari, who are the coordinators of this panel. And the panel will be discussing the role of Hindu women as sustainers of our timeless traditions. So Dr. Neelam Jaiswal is a senior scientist with 20 years of experience in corporate world. She has been involved in several VHPA activities and is also the national event coordinator for Support a Child fundraising shows. And Mrs. Manju Tiwari is an acclaimed administrator and educator, the curriculum director of Bal Vihar Hindi School, VHPA in Atlanta. And she is involved in establishing Hindi language courses in Georgia Tech in 2012 and several Bal Vihars. So I call upon Dr. Neelam Jaiswal ji and Manju Tiwari ji on the panel.
Namaskar, everyone. Thank you, Vallabhaji. It is my great pleasure to introduce the moderator of today's panel, Ami Patel. Ami Patel is a management professional and she is also the co-chair of the Hindu Mandir Executive Conference. She also mentors youth at All World Gayatri Parivar. So here you go, Ami, and we are looking for interesting panel discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neelam ji. Welcome, everyone. It is with great pleasure that I have the privilege of moderating today's panel. And the women have always played a pivotal role as a place of authority and are the cornerstone in the Hindu household. They are the keepers of the flame they are the ones who pass on their heritage to the next generation. Today, we have 4 amazing panelists joining us to share their thoughts and reflections, and I'm going to just introduce them briefly with you. We have joining with us Mahalakshmi Kulaji. She is our first panelist and is a senior sales leader and vice president in a Boston-based intelligent edge platform company. She is also on the board of directors of Chinmaya Mission West, running over 49 centers in North America, where children and adults of all ages and backgrounds engage in learning about the rich cultural heritage of India. Our second panelist is Sadhna Gupta. She is an associate at McKinsey & Company. She's received her BA from Duke University and her MBA from Stanford. She currently resides on the associate board of Build.org to promote college success through entrepreneurship. Sadhna works with students individually and also runs an organization called Your Story Coach. Our third panelist is Renu Sopat Malhotra. She holds an MBA and owns a multidisciplinary engineering company with offices nationwide. She was part of the governing board of World Hindu Council for 9 years and worked closely with Ekal Foundation. She is the president and founder of Seed the World, a nonprofit foundation with the belief that individuals can make a difference. And last but not least, our fourth panelist is Dr. Sheshu Sharma. She is an associate professor in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at Howard University, College of Medicine in Washington, D.C. She was instrumental in starting the Habitat for Humanity's Hindu Community Initiative, the Upar House Project. Under her leadership, the Hindu Temple of Atlanta raised money for the Haven House, a domestic violence shelter. Dr. Sheshu has also received the Most Influential Asian Award in Georgia. Welcome to you all on this bright Saturday morning. The Hindu household is what upholds and sustains the Hindu civilization. Lately, there's a subtle assault on this institution by sources outside and within to break the family by focusing on the nuclear family and mimicking the West. The breakup of the Hindu family could mean the demise of the Hindu civilization, or is it? Let us discuss with this esteemed panel of Hindu women who are sustainers of our timeless traditions. I'd first like to discuss how these women have shaped themselves as the leaders they are today, and by telling us a little bit about the role models that have played a key role in shaping you, that will actually set us a great stage. So let us start off with Mahaji, who can please tell us about a role model who has really, really shaped her.
Thank you, Hariom Ami. Thanks to you and thanks to the Hindu Women's Network for inviting me to participate in this panel. Let me know if you can hear me before I get started.
We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Your question reminds me of how my mom would respond when she would serve me food, and she still does. When I would say, "Mom, that's enough," she would always serve me one more spoonful, right? And all moms do that. I know you asked me for the name of one woman that has inspired me. I cannot help but give you two. The first source of inspiration is, of course, my mother. Although there were many occasions when I disagreed with my mom, who doesn't, I realized later that her strength and strong will was something I now expect to see in myself. My introduction to literature and the rich cultural heritage in these texts was first given to me by my mother. I still recall distinctly when she would be poring over her books as she completed her master's while we as young children were settling in for the night. Her perseverance still amazes me. My second inspiration is Dr. Shashi Dwarkanath. She's a spiritual head for Chinmay Mission Boston. I had the good fortune of meeting and growing under her guidance for the past 20 years. Being a physician with a grueling schedule, she still balanced her work with the need to instill Hindu spiritual values in the growing number of first and second generation Indian American children. She's shown me that you can purposefully engage in and find time for the most important things in life and for what matters to you the most. Keep the most important thing in life.
Thank you so much, Mahaji. Next, I'd like to invite Sadhna ji to please share her thoughts on her role model.
Thank you, Ami, and namaste, everyone. I feel very grateful to be on this panel. And similar to Mahaji, I'm actually going to share two examples. One is a woman I knew really well and really shaped my childhood, and another is someone who's more famous and has served as a postmark for me. The first person I want to talk about is my grandmother. So my mom has been a great role model for me as well. But I think a lot of my inspiration, even for my mother and me, came from our grandmother. And we called her fondly as Biji. And I have very strong memories of spending my summers in India, sitting with my Biji in the bed, and she was teaching me how to learn Hindi and just instilling the importance of having Hindu values. And she really shaped who I am. Something inspirational I want to share about her is she was married at the age of 13 and only had a 7th grade education. And she actually went on at that time in India to get a master's and become a college principal. And that was also because of my Bauji, who said, I want to make sure my wife is as educated as me. And this dynamic and this couple has really set the foundation for how my entire family operates today. I feel so lucky to have been born into a family where being a woman is seen as a strength, and the expectations for me were high from the beginning. And one other thing I'll share about my Biji, which I loved, is her only rule for her health in India was that she would teach every single one of them literacy. She said, I don't want anyone in my family who works in my house to have to feel like this is their only way, and I want to empower them with education. And she would teach each person in the house how to sign their name, how to read Hindi, and eventually help them get a job outside of our house. And that has really inspired me to try to live a life similar to hers. And the second person I'll touch on quickly, which some of you may know, is Indra Nooyi, who is the former CEO of Pepsi. And I just distinctly remember being in college at Duke, and I wanted to pursue a path in the corporate world. And one of my professors asked me, who's a role model you look up to in the corporate world? And I listed a bunch of non-Indian leaders, and she said, what about someone who comes from a similar background as you? And she actually encouraged me to learn more about Indra Nooyi. And I was just so impressed by how she used her Hindu roots, her upbringing in Chennai, and really used that to lead a global company, make a huge difference, all while maintaining who she was. If you listen to some of her YouTube speeches, she's very proud of where she came from, and she has intentionally, even while running Pepsi, been able to instill those values in her daughter. So she is someone I inspire to be like, and she is a great role model for me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sadhna, for sharing that. Next, I'd like to invite Dr. Sheshu Sharmaji. Can you please share who your role model is and how she shaped you?
Namaste. Thank you all for having me here. First, I should say Matu Devo Bhava. I did learn a lot from my mother and my mother-in-law too. Two great women in my life. But I never had this idea of a role model until after I got married, when I met this remarkable woman, Dr. Pudipeddi Shakuntalamma. She's the sister of my father-in-law. She was born in a very orthodox Telugu South Indian Brahmin family. Her mother passed away when she was born, and her father remarried soon. This was in 1921. She grew up with no mother figure. In 1941, when women were still sheltered and protected, she was the first woman to enter Andhra Medical College and graduated with a degree in medicine from Andhra University in Visakhapatnam. Though she just had a simple MBBS degree, she performed complex surgeries, administered anesthesia, you name it, or she did it. And in those days, there were no men who dared to marry a woman of that intellect, skills, and education. So she remained unmarried, but made her own family with a girl and a boy who were orphaned that she adopted. She was always ahead of her times, but content and peaceful always. She was well versed in Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, and all the Hindu scriptures. She was a staunch follower of Paramhamsa Yogananda and Sat Sai Baba. She was an avid reader and wrote a book herself on spirituality. What I most adore about her is her strength and perseverance in spite of adversities, and more than anything else, her dharmic outlook toward life.
Thank you so much, Sheshuji. It is really wonderful that you have all shared your personal stories. I feel extremely privileged to hear from you. What I've heard today is that you have had individuals who have taught you intentional action, who have purposefully engaged you and taught you the essence of how to manage your time. They have taught you balance. They have taught you to persevere against really odd circumstances and challenges of their times, so that you can, in your time, embrace some challenges that are of greater magnitude with the same level of ease and comfort that these wonderful, amazing leaders and role models in your lives have taught you. Next, let us talk about the Hindu women and how they've played a significant role in keeping our culture and traditions vibrant and thriving, despite the adversities throughout the generations. What can today's women learn from her illustrious ancestors? I'd like to invite Mahaji. Can you please share with us your thoughts?
Can you hear me, Ami?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. That's a very very important and a really, really good question. Women were first and are first and foremost homemakers. One of the greatest role the Hindu woman has played is to shape the family's physical, emotional, and mental health. I know it's often vilified, but Manusmriti actually says, "Yatra naryastu pujyante ramante tatra devataha. Yatraitastu na pujyante sarvas tatra apalaha kriyaha." What it means is that the divine are extremely happy where women are respected. Where they are not, all actions are fruitless. It is perhaps from there that a recent president was heard quoting, "You can judge a nation and how successful it will be based on how it treats its women and its girls." Right through the ages, we have known of women that have been the dharmic support for society. We have all heard about Chhatrapati Shivaji's mom, Jijabai, and how she used to tell him stories of Lord Rama that inspired him to be a great warrior and leader himself. If the family was the microcosm, then society was the macrocosm, and the women played a key role in the health of both. Be it Mandodari chastising Ravan for abducting Sita Maya, or Sita ji herself counsel to Lord Rama Satyabhama's defeat of Narakasura to Jhansi Rani Lakshmi Bai or Rudramma Devi, both of who fiercely protected their kingdom from invaders. Women have had illustrious roles, whether they were homemakers or queens. What then can we learn, your question is, from our illustrious ancestors? We learn that women have an important role to play in shaping society, be it at home or at work. No role is too small or too big for the woman. To say sometimes that being a homemaker is any less important would be an insult to our grandmothers and their mothers before them. We are a product of their sacrifice and their contributions. Conversely, we have role models and successful career women. We heard about Indra Nooyi and the others who have upheld Hindu traditional values and have still contributed significantly in their field of work without compromise. What I'd like to say is that irrespective of the role we play, at home or outside, we should conduct ourselves with pride and the awareness that our contribution is critical and important. When in doubt, we can always find a role model in our scriptures and look for guidance therein. I hope that helps.
That absolutely helps. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Trishji, what do you think about this particular question as well?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hindu society over the several millennia has been full of women of wisdom, whether it is Gargi, Maitreyi, or Ubhaya Bharati. So there's so many, but I just want to tell you a story. Long ago, there was a little boy who loved to travel in a jet car, the horse-driven cart, every day. He used to go to school in the jet car. One day, when the teacher asked the children what they want to become when they grow up, each one said they wanted to be a lawyer, a doctor, teacher, etc. This little boy said he wanted to be a jet car wala. Everyone, including the teacher, laughed at him, and the kids laughed at him, and they ran home and they told his mother what the little boy said. So when he arrived at home, his mother welcomed him with a peaceful smile and asked him, "My dear Kana, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And he said the same thing again. His mother smiled at him and said, "That's good. Certainly, dear." And then she took him to the puja room and she showed him the picture on the wall. And she said, "See the picture? There is the horse cart that you like. You can certainly become a jatkawala, but not of the cart with one horse, but with 4 horses, like the one in the picture," and pointed to Lord Krishna. The 4 horses she was talking about are, like Yomesh Joshi early mentioned, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. The Jatkawala in the picture is the divine teacher of the universe who taught dharmic principles, the 4 dharmic principles. So like him, you can become the teacher of the universe, okay? And then she hugged him and gave him a nice hug. So then she planted the seeds of dharma in him. That is the real mother. We all know that little boy who did become the universal teacher, Swami Vivekananda. A woman raised in dharmic values would impart those on her children. Such a woman was Swami Vivekananda's mother, and we need more women like her. Bringing up children with a lot of pressure is not what we want. Or bringing up children with rituals and culture is wonderful, and actually it is essential. But without imparting the dharmic values, it is very hard to engage young people in the practice of religion. As that's what is happening now. While growing up, I knew only Hindu rituals and culture. Hindu knowledge, or the Jnana Marg, or the essence of Bhagavad Gita, or the Upanishads, was never taught to us in a way that had an impact on me. I don't say that it was not taught to us, but it never had an impact. I never heard of such wonderful messages of Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, especially the 5th and 6th slokas in the 6th chapter. They're my favorite, like Uddharedatmanatmanam, Natmanam avasadi. What a wonderful message. Only you can pull yourself up. Nobody else can. You are your best friend, and you are your worst enemy as well. Or the one from the 2nd chapter, 47th sloka. Karmanyevadhikaraste maphaleshu kadachana. Put all your efforts in your work. Don't worry about the results. It's not in your hands. Wonderful messages. We need to spoon feed. these messages to every child when they are still in elementary school. And growing up, I never realized that the true essence of the Hindu religion is a sublime philosophy capable of giving peace and solace to the distressed and afflicted. That concept has to be instilled in the minds of the young. So we need mothers like Swami Vivekananda's mother. And Swami Vivekananda said, we must teach children that we should have faith in ourselves. We must become world movers. For everything is not outside, but in us. We must see religion face to face, experience it, and thus solve our doubts about it. And thank you, Ami, for the opportunity to express my opinion.
Thank you so much, Nishiji and Mahadi. It is really wonderful that you have been able to share with your personal stories as well and applying real life scenarios, how you've addressed this question of how you've learned from the illustrious ancestors and how we all can do the same too. And Shishiji, I really enjoyed the story that you shared about Swami Vivekanandaji and his mother and the four horses. And Mahaji, the way that you articulated the vibrancy with which we can have Nadi Jagran continue, which it already, Nadis are already awakened, but that how that can continue down the path would be fantastic. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. Next, I'd like to move on to another perspective on women, and it is the role that she carries as a householder and a career person. How does the Hindu woman cope with the influence of current societal trends while maintaining her cultural values? I would like to invite, first of all, Renuji to please share her thoughts with us.
Namaskar.
Namaste, Renuji.
Namaskar. You know, I think I came to the United States when I was 21 years old, and I came with a 7-week-old baby, and I came in the mid-60s. So I am almost like the pilgrim parents of the Hindu people in this country. So I was kind of an odd person in the Midwest. The white people were very nice to me, but they almost looked at me like I was, now what is she? She's not white, she's not black, but she's something. And they invited me to talk to their churches. So just imagine in the 60s going and talking in a church and trying to explain something as subtle, as beautiful as our Hindu dharma. The very concept of dharma is so strong. Once you understand that, you can deal with life. So anyway, I would say that my role models were my parents, my mother as a karma yogi, my father as a jnana yogi. They are the ones who taught me that we have these 4 purusharthas. I didn't call them purusharthas. I was not taught to give that kind of talks and lectures, but they came to me whenever it was necessary. And my mother was a Bengali and my father a Punjabi. So she's a Bengali Brahmin, father is a Punjabi, and it was unheard of in those times. It's like if one of my grandchildren went and married somebody from Mars. People used to ask me lots of questions about why I was mixed. So the whole thing about being mixed has changed a lot. And I think I was able to handle life here in a happy way, guide my children to focus on studying. I was going to college to do my MBA when they were very little. That was like a role model for them, I think. They're all 3 of them are surgeons and married for 25, 27 years and doing well. So I think that's my success story. And I always told my parents, who used to come and visit us in the US quite often, that India has a safety net because of these 4 purusharthas. Everybody, though we don't know that we are learning it, but we are learning it. And it helps you get through your interpersonal relationships, your desire to do something with your money. We established this family foundation some 26 years ago and have been working to empower the women. So for me, it was a real pleasure to be invited to be a panelist here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sringaji, for sharing your personal story and also for sharing about your the role models that you have in your own household. Next, I would like to invite Sadhna ji. Sadhna, can you please share how does the Hindu woman cope with the influences of current societal trends while maintaining her cultural values? What is your experience?
Yeah, thank you, Ami. I'm speaking from the perspective, maybe a slightly earlier perspective as someone who is soon to have a family. I just got engaged to my partner, and this has become something that's top of mind of how do I want to raise children or start a family in America while maintaining strong dharmic values. And given the modern influences of everything and the fact that I grew up here, what choices will I make to make sure that I am actually promoting this generation to generation and giving my kids the same strong foundation that my parents created for me? So in this context, I want to talk about three big themes that I think have really stood out as I examined kind of my own experience and then what I hope to do in the future. So the first theme is intentionality. As I look back, I can now appreciate so many choices that my parents made to make sure that I ended up like this, that I was proud to be Indian, proud to be Hindu, that I actually know what that means, and that I'm on this panel today. So I think really it wasn't an accident, and I can now appreciate, they immigrated here. I came at the age of 5. And actually, I remember this so distinctly. At the age of, I think, 6.5, my parents sent me to India alone with my brother who was 9. And I think people thought they were crazy at the time. And that was a really deliberate decision they made. And I spent, I think, 5 or 6 summers in India alone with my brother, developing a relationship with my grandparents, with my mamajis, with my chacha. And the connection I now feel to India, I think, is something that is really unique, and I always consider it home. When I land in Delhi, I don't feel like, oh, I'm going to visit India, and that's something that I think has really shaped my views moving forward. So just them taking the courage to send kids alone to India, I'm really grateful for that, and I hope I can replicate something similar for my children, whether it's sending them to India or not, but really making sure they feel a connection to their culture and to their homeland, and that they recognize where they come from and that it's not just the US. The second theme I want to talk about is prioritization. So I think for me, my partner is an MD, PhD, and I am in the business world. And so I don't think we're going to have easy lives where it's just going to be, oh, I have a lot of abundant time, let me go research this and then teach my kids that, right? Like I think it's easy for this to fall to priority number 10 or 15. And I really hope that doesn't happen, and I think that would be a critical mistake. So just really realizing where this needs to lie on the priority list, and the fact that it needs to be an integrated part of our family life. That's something I've been thinking about a lot. In this realm, my parents, I went to Balvihar every Sunday for 16 years. I was actually taught by Dr. Abhay Uncle and Jaya Auntie, and so I feel so honored and lucky to have had them as my gurus for 16 years. And that really has changed my ability to succeed in this country and to be proud of who I am. So I want to make sure that I can replicate that and give my kids a Hindu education in addition to a mainstream education. And I'm really impressed by all the work Mahaji and others on this panel do to run Chinmaya Mission, other opportunities like that. And I hope to similarly follow in their footsteps in the future. I also went to family camp every summer, and I remember at the time saying, oh, I don't want to go. Can you send me to Girl Scout camp? I don't want to do this. And my parents forced me, and they said, you have to go. And now when I look back, those are some of my fondest memories. And I'm actually bringing back a lot of those practices. I remember we used to wake up at 6 a.m. for the yoga, and I thought it was the worst thing ever. And I've actually started doing that every morning. And the meditation and, all of those things at the time, they seemed not important, but now I really appreciate the prioritization. And the last thing I'll share here is just the aspect of community and not doing this alone. I think something I've learned from all the women on the panel and all the women in my life is the women who succeed are the ones who create a support system of really powerful women to help them along the way, and men. So as I think about community, foremost with my partner, it's important that we're aligned and that we have similar values about the importance of both homemaking and career. And I think traditionally some of those home responsibilities have fell on women. And to Mahaji's point, that's a privilege, right? It's a privilege to be the primary homemaker. But I think as we evolve, we need to bring men into that and also have them play a stronger role in the homemaking. And then also on the career side, just having other examples of women to look up to, and of course, having an extended family. I think Ami mentioned at the beginning, one of the benefits of our Hindu values is really this extended family and not the idea of, you're just one nuclear unit. And a lot of my relatives in India still live in a joint family, and I can see a lot of the benefits of that. So I hope that as I raise kids, they're able to experience that as well, just understanding, our traditions and the importance of community.
Thank you so much, Sadhna, for sharing that. Actually, it's quite fantastic that you're now considering obviously becoming a householder, and you're also going to be challenged with making choices that your parents had to make. But I really enjoyed the part that you said about prioritization and how you're going to have to focus on that with a partner who's equally ambitious in their career, and how that will play an integral role in terms of building the values within your own family, which would of course broadcast to the larger community, because it starts from one single family that creates that community. So thank you so much for sharing that. And Renuji, what I really enjoyed about your answer actually was how you talked about the challenges that your family faced, especially with the rich and diverse background that you have, and how that was very integral in shaping not only who you are, but how that also changed your perspective and how you see other people. And the kind of community service and the work that you do is definitely coming out through that, because you are definitely a leader who's responding to those in crises because you are able to understand that internal turmoil so much more better. So thank you so much for sharing your stories with us today. Next, I'd like to get into a discussion about the 50 years from now reflection, right? So we're in a reflections conference, and we're talking about the past 50 years, of course, but of course, what does the next 50 years look like for us? And how does this Hindu community in North America look like 50 years from now? Obviously, with the current times that are going on right now, with unprecedented times as never before, this is really acting as a catalyst. And so it would be wonderful to hear your thoughts. And where do you see the Hindu society 50 years from now? What is our vision? What is your vision? And what is the role that Hindu women and yourselves and all of us as audience members can play in accomplishing that vision? So if you can please just start us off, Sheshaji, with your thought process on this, that would be great.
Thank you, Ami. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay. This is a very important question. Every Hindu parent, even though this is a women's panel, I think it's an important thing that every Hindu parent thinks about. Before we envision what our society is going to be like 50 years from now, my question is, what are the challenges that we are facing right now, and how best to address them? Recently, I've reviewed the literature and came across 3 or 4 studies that were done at several major universities, and all these are involving Hindu youth between the ages of 22 and 29 regarding their outlook and their opinion about religion and Hinduism. All these studies show that Hindu youth are actually distancing themselves from their faith. 62% of young, I'm actually quoting a study that was published in July, August, September issue of Hinduism Today in 2017. 62% of young people in the US consider themselves spiritual but not religious. SBNR, that's what they call themselves. A recent survey of Hindu undergraduates at Duke University showed that a full 3/4 of them, 75% of them, consider themselves spiritual but not religious. Moreover, the trend was more prominent among undergraduates who were born in this country. All the scientific evidence suggests that the SBNR, the spiritual but not religious trend, is uniquely an American phenomenon, and it is not seen in other countries. The vast majority of the spiritual but not religious say that they do not believe in proselytizing, and they are tolerant of other religions, other religious faiths. Many of them practice yoga and believe in yogic principles. In fact, many practice principles which are very core of Hinduism and other dharmic faiths as well. Then why do so few of these youngsters call themselves Hindus? That's a very puzzling question. What makes them distant from Hinduism? And the reasons were given in the studies that, number one, Hinduism is incompatible with science that they are studying in high school and university level. And also there's a lot of negativity learning about Hinduism or in schools, which has been addressed over the years. To them, religion is public and spirituality is private. Religion implies seeing things as black and white, whereas spirituality involves a willingness to engage with life's gray areas. Religion is intolerant of other faiths, whereas spirituality shows or allows seekers to incorporate tools and texts from other faiths that may be useful in their spiritual journey. So interestingly, all the things that they mentioned, the principles that they believe in these studies is what Hinduism is all about. So how do we break through the strong false dichotomy in which religion and spirituality are fundamentally opposed in young American minds? The research clearly shows that there is need for educating people and young people about dharma, dharmic faiths in proper perspective. Only then will people begin to change the understanding of the entire concept of religion. So as parents, we need to ask ourselves, probably this is happening, maybe I'm not aware of this. We need to ask ourselves whether our children in North America have access to the deep-rooted knowledge of dharma and understand our dharma the way it appeals to them. I'm sure they're exposed to it, but is it being presented to them the way it appeals to them? If not, how do we carve out our teachings in a way that they embrace it rather than walk away from it? So the first work that demands our attention is that the most wonderful truths confined in the Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita and all, they must be brought out to our youth and taught to them in a way that has a positive impact on their minds. The Hindu faith-based organizations need to revamp their curriculum. Recite slokas in Bhagavad Gita, Vishnu Sahasranam, in Hindu culture, they're all excellent and they're very much needed. Please don't get me wrong. But starting at young age, the core Vedantic principles need to be imbibed in these young minds in a way they understand, they appreciate, and that has a positive impact. 3 things that I urge you to do. Watch the lecture of Swami Sarvapriyananda. He's a monk of the Vedantic Society order. On Bhagavad Gita, it was given to the students of IIT Kanpur in 2015. Watch that. Wonderful. I think every student should watch it. Read at least the first volume of Swami Vivekananda's. It's a 10 volume. It's a 10 chapter, 10 book work. Read the first book. It's our children will love it. Then read the most recent Hinduism Today issue that came just this month, and it talked about some of the challenges and also answers that I just mentioned. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. And I hope 50 years from now, I won't be, if I'm here, I won't be here, but we won't be asking these questions and challenges. And thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Sheshaji, for sharing your thoughts. It's quite extraordinary that you have been able to do some research as well to help prepare for this, and we'll talk about it at the end after the speakers have had a chance. But I'd love to take some of your points and reiterate them for the audience so that they can definitely take note. Thank you so much. Next, I'd like to invite Renuji. Renuji, can you please share your vision on 50 years from now and how you see things moving, and what advice you'd give our audience?
Thank you, Ami. Like everyone else, I too am enjoying this very, very much. And I think the future is very, very, very bright for Hindus. I have given some 250 talks in various universities in the US, in India, and have run a Bal Vihar for 7 years. Then we had to move, so I couldn't do as much as some people have done. Then I started to study Vedanta with Swami Dayananda Saraswati ji. I was with him for almost 27 years of constant studying, plus spending one whole year as an Antevasi, as we say. So I went and stayed at the ashram in Saylorsburg, Pennsylvania, and also in Anaikatti in Tamil Nadu. They were just fabulous times for me because he's not no more now, but he taught beautifully, and he knew so many artists, so many singers, and also Vedapathis. I learned the intricacies of how Hindu Dharma has been maintained. I feel very grateful. I feel very blessed to have had that opportunity. All of that helped me bring up my own children in what I think is a proper way, because I am fairly good friends with them, occasional little tiffs, but nothing much. Two of my children live in the same town as I do in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Earlier, I lived in Grand Rapids for 35 years, which was a very, very conservative Christian, reformed place. And I started giving my talks there. I didn't know anything about the Western ideas of religion. For example, we say, Hey Bhagwan, or Hey Ram. That is a sort of a nice thing to say. In the Western world, they think that's blasphemy, or at least back then they thought that a lot. United States also has become a much nicer place. But wherever I gave the talks about Hindu Dharma, at least 5 or 6 people would stand up and say, I think I'm a Hindu. Because, Dharma is basically how, without teaching, anybody will feel. If Dharma has to be taught in a university, that's going to leave a lot of people out, especially in the US, because when I came here, only about 35% of the people used to go to college. So I hope you understand what I'm saying. So Dharma is what you feel. It's how I want to be treated. I should treat you that way. Now, this thought is there everywhere. This thought is also very, very natural to human beings. So I think in the next 50 years, long time, I think we'll flourish. We have to have confidence. When we were subjugated for nearly 1,000 years, 1,000 years from the 7th century to nearly now when Modi ji has come, people tried to hit us and make us feel useless. We weren't doing anything right. Whereas so many of us can speak 4, 5, 6 languages. When I came here, somebody said, oh, I thought in India they mostly know English. And I said, yes, we do. But you still have an accent, they said. And I thought, how many languages do you speak? Well, just English. I said, that's why. If you try to study another language, you will find out that accent is just a local thing. Like the Midwestern English is different than the English in the southern part of the United States. There they say ladies' room instead of ladies' room. Small things, but those things people can understand, children can understand. So I think our future is great. We need more confidence. The number of Indians who are heading multinationals is absolutely amazing. We should have that list with us all the time. And when they say, well, you are not the top country in the world, I just say, yes, except the top multinationals are being led by people who are Hindu, who are Indian. Some may not be Hindu, but they are still coming from the subcontinent of India. So we need to work on feeling more confident and presenting ourselves as Hindus, and also teaching this to our children. It's been my pleasure and joy to be able to bring up children who are definitely Hindu, though they are not ritualistic. The rituals bother them, though that has its own importance. But we always do all the Diwali is the biggest thing in our house, because I know that when I think of India and my first 21 years there, I think of all the different small holidays that were happening in our home that endeared me to the Indian culture. But I tell you, you cannot ever, ever lose being a Hindu, because it is a natural dharma. It is not a religion. So I can talk about this for hours, but I won't. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Renuji. That was really amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I really enjoyed how you were able to leave the children in at the end, and some of the profound messages you have, we'll definitely talk about some more at the end. But next, let's hear from Sadhna. Sadhna, what do you think about this? We've heard from two different amazing speakers, but we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I'm so inspired by what both Seshuji and Renuji shared, and I just want to build on that. What they shared really resonates with what I see happening in my generation. I think I fall at the edge of the age group Seshuji was talking about at 29, and I would echo that. I don't know, maybe 75% of my Hindu friends don't identify as Hindu. And so even in my group, I see this happening, and they say, oh, the religion is sexist, or religion in general is sexist. And hearing that, I mean, it's just such a huge disconnect, because for me, having studied the scriptures, having examples, I would say Hinduism is the opposite of sexist and is actually a force that has really empowered women, and was a reason I identified with Hindu Dharma early on. So I think just finding ways to bridge this gap is going to be really one of the biggest ways we can change the future of our community. So all of that resonates, and Renuji, the concept of this being universal and just so basic and something anyone can resonate with, I agree with as well. The two things I'll add here, I think my hope for the Hindu community and the Hindu Dharma faith in America is, one, that will be more vocal segment of society, and that two, we will step up as servant leaders and use our role as model minorities to really move the needle on certain social issues in America. So I'll dig into the first one around being more vocal segment of society. So I'm going to share a really minor example, but just this idea of, you know, things that I see are being appropriated from Hindu culture. So I think the concept of turmeric lattes, like when I saw this in Starbucks, I was really shocked. Like, what is this? Why does it cost $8 to buy a turmeric latte? And does anyone know that this is haldi? And you know, it's something that we've been eating for generations. And this is a silly example. I don't think our Hindu tradition is all about haldi, but I think this really minor example shows that oftentimes we don't take enough ownership and we're not vocal enough about all of the amazing things that we as a community have to give. I think Seshuji said people think that Hinduism is in conflict with science. I was so amazed in Balvihar to learn about all the mathematicians, scientists, all of the inventions we have in that space. And I think there's just a gap in the understanding. And the reason this Haldi example, or even yoga, you see now yoga studios are owned by all whites across, and it's great that they're embracing our traditions, but why weren't we able to, be the ones leading that? So those two I think are minor examples. But what I fear will happen is that for bigger things like non-Hindus will be the ones who actually go and read Ramayana and Mahabharata. I think if some of them started reading it, they would be so fascinated and would actually be very quick to embrace those traditions. And I think sometimes we miss just being proud of that thing. Like I think right now a non-Hindu professor is probably more likely to talk about Bhagavad Gita than some of our own Hindu parents to their kids, right? Like I'm more likely to learn about that in my Duke religion class from a white professor than from other adults that I'm meeting that are Hindu. And so I really hope that dynamic will change and that we will really embrace, I think everyone's here at this conference, which is a great step, but we will own our culture and religion because I think that's what kids learn from. And when they see us being vocal and proud, I think they will follow suit and they will be able to follow in the same path. So that's one thing I hope our society does a better job of. And then the last thing I want to touch on is being servant leaders as a community. And this is something that's, I think, coming to the forefront for me personally with all of the social issues happening in the United States. But we are really privileged as a Hindu society to fall in this group as model minority. And I know people may have different views on this, but I feel that our community here is largely very successful in the career world. And we have this opportunity to take this success and what we've been able to do in the United States and help others do that. I'll share two examples. One is the Bhutanese and Nepalese refugees that are Hindu and have come here for the last 10 years or so. And I know the Boston chapter of VHP was trying to really make a concerted effort to welcome these refugees and to give them basic needs and really be servant leaders of the community. And I think that's so important. I, in college, wrote an entire blog and thesis about this topic of how many of these refugees were converting to Christianity simply because the churches were the first ones showing up to welcome them. The churches were driving them to their doctor's appointments, and the churches were there. And you can't blame those refugees. And I think that's really an area our community can step up, and especially for Hindus who are in need. I think some women on this panel do amazing work helping Hindus who are in underprivileged situations, but I really hope that we continue to really be, servant leaders and do a lot of volunteer work and give back to the community and help those who aren't as privileged as some of us are in this community. And then the other connection I will share is to the Black Lives Matter movement. This is something that's really been important for me as a young person growing up in America. And I would say a lot of Hindus or Indians get the rep of being racist against Black people. And for me, that has been really heartbreaking to see, to have conversations with adults in my life where I don't feel like they're empathizing with the struggles of the Black community. And I do think that's a violation of our Hindu dharma. And I think this is a time for us to use our role, our success, and to be bystanders and help uplift this community and take a stand. So I recently joined a collective called Browns for Blacks. And that, again, it was when I felt very proud to be Hindu, because we're all coming together and saying, the treatment, the police brutality is something that goes against our dharmic values and what we believe in, and we're going to take a stance as a community. So I hope we continue to do more of that we are seen as both successful doctors, lawyers, etc., but also as people who are proud of their dharma and will actually stand up and fight for the right thing and give back to the community. And I'm confident we'll do it, and we have a lot of great examples to learn from. So I'm looking forward to the next 50 years and to see the progress that we're able to make as a community.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sadhna. That is incredible. You have pumped and energized all of us into thinking differently. And I would like to now invite Mahaji to share her thoughts regarding the next 50 years and what vision she takes forward for us, what actions we can take as a community.
Thank you, Ami. You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sorry to keep checking on that. It's just important when we are all so much online to make sure that you can hear us as we unmute yourselves. So your question was, where do we want to see the Hindu society 50 years from now? I mean, that is a grand vision, and I'm probably too small to say where I would want to see the Hindu society. But what is our vision, and how should we, as women practitioners of Hinduism, help accomplish that vision in our small little ways? You know, Seshuji, Renuji, Sadhna, and the others, they spoke really, really well on the grand vision for how we should be. The way I look at what Hindu society would be 50 years from now is pretty much the same. I don't really see a massive groundbreaking or shift in the way the society would be, because Hindu society has always been flexible, adaptable, and vibrant. It has been the millenniums past. It's always been that way. But the only difference I see there, Ami, is flexibility should not mean compromise. Adaptability should not mean giving up of one's values. And vibrancy should not come at the price of one's own culture. We can't be a melting pot. Melting pot means that you don't have an individual identity, and which means then that you're dissolving one's own individual identity into this large pot. And I want to give you, it's just a couple of examples around how a tree grows. A tree that does not grow deep roots often gets disturbed and tips over in a storm. A tree can grow big, it can spread, even try and reach the sky. As long as the roots are entrenched, it will remain strong. But a tree with shallow roots, however tall it may be, will topple in the face of a storm. You may say, well, Maha, what does this guy have to do with Hinduism? Well, Hinduism, as you've heard, Abhayaji and all of the, panelists talk about, talks about the four purusharthas or objectives in life. And why am I repeating this? This is so critical. Our ancestors believed in the pursuit of artha or prosperity, right? And kama, pleasure, and eventually moksha, which is liberation. This should be the highest goal, and all of the ashramas were geared towards that. But the most important thing was all of these were rooted in dharma or right action, which is why it comes first. That's why we say dharma, artha, kama, moksha, not artha, kama, moksha, and dharma, as though it was something that we should reach out to at the end after all of our worldly pursuits. And then we go and look at dharma and say, well, now I'm ready for retirement. How do I look at leading a dharmic life when I have led a life of greed and avarice, right? That's not how we look at it. So society, as we know now, is reeling from the results of wrong action or adharma or lack of right action, be it life-threatening diseases or other ills that are plaguing us. We have strayed from the path of nobility and dharma, which is why we find ourselves sometimes where we are at. No books have been written on how to deal with these things that ails large swaths of society. We've read books on management and self-improvement, because they seem almost small, because they seem almost individual. But no books have been written on how to deal with these large things that are ailing us right now. It is probably time to go back to our scriptures and integrate that art of right living and contact with the world. You heard Sadhna talk about adding turmeric to your tea or spices or performing yoga. So merely adapting just parts of what our ancients said at the physical level without integrating that into our living, that's not sustainable. It'll just create more dichotomy. Why? Because people are not able to see the results of these things in their life and in society as a whole. So this dichotomy that Seshuji talked about, the dichotomy of dharma and action, definitely needs to be resolved. And Sanatan Dharma offers a way to integrate the seeming contrast. And the person that can play an important role in resolving this dichotomy is the woman. Her role in the household and at work is to bring this contradiction in the young minds of the children that Renuji and Sadhna talked about, and helping resolve it for them. But to do that, women have to learn, and then they can only then be the guiding light That is, my vision for 50 years, which I definitely will not be around to see, is still rich in dharmic values, thriving and working together in the spirit of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, as Abhiyaji said. And when in doubt, I always say, go back to the scriptures, because the answers are there waiting to be found. You just need to know what the right questions are. Thank you, Ami.
Wow, thank you, all of you. This is absolutely incredible to be able to have you all speak today and share your wisdom. I'm quite blessed and grateful to actually be moderating this panel, because I feel so pumped up by all the advice that you've given to us today as well. So as an audience member, what can we take away from all of you? What can we do in the next 50 years? I've heard about the need for education, and that young people have to understand and appreciate the dharmic faith. And this was something that Seshuji, you shared about this, and you gave us 3 takeaways. One of them was to watch a lecture of Swami Sarapriyananji from IIT Kanpur. I actually subscribe to that YouTube channel, and I recommend all of you to do the same as well. It's actually a fantastic channel. The other thing is to read Swami Vivekanandaji Volume 1. I absolutely agree with you. I think somebody who has grown up in the Western world, I was born in India, but I was brought here at the age of 8. I was very curious, and I was dealing with many of the challenges that some of your children or some of your, some of the people that you may have seen in your lives, in your volunteer lives, have lived through. And I think that educating yourself with some basic essentials can really help. And the written word is very, very powerful, especially Swami Vivekanandaji, big fan. I share his birthday too. And the other thing is about reading the latest Hinduism Today magazine, and I agree with you that that magazine is definitely one of the leading thought leadership magazines that I think are available out there for all of us to look at. So thank you so much for that, Renuji. I really, really enjoyed that you said that you have to think like a Hindu. You are, like, if you think like a Hindu, you are a Hindu, but you don't actually have to be educated formally in a university setting to be a Hindu. And it's something that you feel, and it comes from within you. So if you treat others the way that you would want to be treated, that is actually dharma. And dharma is natural, it's not religion. And you're very, very right about that. So I really appreciate that. And you said how we can counter the next 50 years is by making sure that we have the confidence and the pride as Hindus to go forward and go counter those naysayers by just having that pride and confidence in ourselves. And that will actually be the message out there. We don't need to do anything more than that. And Sadhana, I would love to thank you for the 2 points that you have given us today, which is to be more vocal in society and also to have a servant leadership mindset. But you've also inspired us with specific examples in ways that we can give back and lead. So thank you so much for your thought leadership on this and the next 50 years from now, how we can make a difference in North America and in the communities we live, and how we can all prosper collectively. Mahaji, flexible, but not to compromise, adaptable, but not giving up on one's values, and vibrant, but not at the price of one's own culture. This is a quotable, Mahaji. This is absolutely fantastic. And I really think that is the key message here, is that if we can understand this quote from you and understand that if we have deep roots that we're going to reach the skies for sure, and we're not going to be toppled down by any storm. So the other thing that I also appreciated that you brought forward for us and to make us remember is that the 4 Purusharthas are there, but not to be seen in any way, to be misinterpreted in any way. What we need to look at them with is the lens of pursuing them with the right action, and that is dharma, to pursue them with the right action. And the other thing that you also shared with us is how we can play a role to resolve this and be the guiding light for the next generation. So thank you so much for sharing. All of you panelists have